All right, welcome back to another episode of the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast. Today is a very special episode. We have a guest on. Her name is Nikki Kirk, and she is going to be talking all about Amazon FBA, how she started and everything like that. Nikki, welcome. We're so excited to have you as a guest.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be on here.
So you want to start off by telling us how you got started with reselling?
Yeah, so I started full-time RVing in 2017. And before that, I was living in Los Angeles, California, and I had done the whole corporate life. So I had worked at Belkin, I've worked at Mattel. Even back before then, I worked at the Virgin Mega stores, which were, tourist stores in Hollywood and in New York. And those went away in 2008 when I entered the workforce. That lovely year, everything kind of shut down. So my goal in life after college was always to get in with a company and work my way up, like old school, what people used to do. And I quickly realized that is not what happens anymore, that you have to jump around jobs to get, a new promotion or whatever. Anyway, so I was kind of over corporate life. I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, didn't know what it would be. I've always wanted to own my own boutique. So that was kind of my goal and what I went to college for, but things went a little haywire. And so I decided to go with my best friend, buy an RV, and go full-time RVing. And we hit the road in 2017. I had saved up enough money to be able to support that for 6 months, knowing all along that I would have to figure something out that I wanted to do. To make money. So I had found out about selling on Amazon, doing retail arbitrage, which is where I go into Walmart, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, I buy stuff, and then I sell it on Amazon. And so I bought a course, and I was doing that while, leaving in an RV, traveling around. So I got a little bit of a slow start because I was more excited to just be traveling and not working for a time. So I was doing that, and I finally finished the course, got my first shipment in. So we hit the road in June. And by the time I finally sent a shipment in, it was, like 2 months later, it was in August. And then I saw, you get your first sales, and I was like, okay, this works. This is exciting. And I love shopping. So I was pretty much hooked after that. And I didn't plan my travel around sourcing necessarily. So sometimes we would be out in the middle of nowhere and I wouldn't source that week. Or we would be, 40 minutes from a city and I could go source that week. So I've just been doing it ever since. And I absolutely love going shopping and sourcing and then selling stuff on Amazon.
That's really cool. So basically you use retail arbitrage and selling on Amazon to support your adventures and traveling and making an income so you can not have to work a corporate job and basically fund your life, right?
Yep, exactly. So I initially started with, I think it was $750. And then after a month, I was like, okay, I need more stock to be able to build it up. And so I put in another $500. But that was all I started with because I had $10,000 of savings and nothing else. And so I couldn't, dump a bunch of money into this thing. But once I saw it was working, that really did kind of help get it going. And I was paying all of the bills. So when we left, I had no debt. And then I bought an RV, bought a truck, so now I've got all this debt. And so I had enough money doing Amazon part-time. I've always done it part-time. So I would go sourcing 1 day a week, pack it up, a day or two later that week and kind of be done with it. And I was able to make enough money to pay for that. And I did it for 5 years, just traveling. Now we're more stationary, but I was traveling for 5 years, selling on Amazon the whole time.
Wow. And where did you decide to settle down?
We were thinking Texas. Even before we set off, we were like, okay, we'll find some land in Texas. And then just happenstance, in 2020, we have that. If you guys, I know, Liz, that you've RV'd, but in the RV world, there's a US sticker map, right? So you get to put a sticker on. Everyone has their own reasons for a sticker, but ours is if you've stayed a night there, then you can put a sticker on. So we were traveling through Oklahoma because we hadn't been there yet. And it was a sticker state, what we call them, not necessarily a state we were trying to go to, just, get the sticker. So we ended up staying a week here in Oklahoma, and it was actually really pretty. And it's a lot like Texas in that you can get land pretty inexpensive. Texas is different now. There's a lot of people there, but at the time they're here in Oklahoma, there's not a lot of people, even friends and family we know. It's like pulling teeth to get them to come here because everyone has their assumptions about Oklahoma. And so It's really nice. So we ended up buying land last year in Oklahoma. And so I've been stationary all through 2022, which was a little bit of a change, but I'm still traveling like by air now.
That's amazing. That's like the dream, right? That's the dream. Very cool. So in what other ways, besides being able to fund your, traveling adventures, in what other ways has Amazon changed your life?
It really just being able to believe in yourself and being proud of what you've built. Like I did it all on my own, essentially. Like I'm the one going and sourcing it. The bad thing to that is that if I'm not going sourcing, then no one else is doing it for me, right? Or if I'm sick, like you don't really get sick days when you're your own boss. But being able to have that freedom to work when I want to work, not work when I don't want to work, make as much money as I want to. Like during Q4, obviously, I'm sourcing a whole lot more than I am any other time of the year because that's when I make the bulk of my money, those 4 months at the end of the year. And so it's just, I started selling and then I started teaching other people probably 2 or 3 years after I had been selling for a while on my YouTube. I have free YouTube videos that I would start teaching them. And then that opened this whole other just like aspect of growing my business in ways that I didn't think I could. So at the end of the day, though, Amazon selling is still my very favorite. Like if everything else went away, I would be just fine sourcing and selling stuff on Amazon.
Awesome. So talk to us a little bit about how many items, like how many SKUs do you have on Amazon currently? Do you know or have like a guesstimate?
Yeah, I think last I looked, because I actually just recently got a repricer that I'm setting up. So I have around 300 SKUs at the moment, different things. So it's not like, private label where it's just one SKU and you have a bulk of it. I have like one of this, maybe 20 of that, 10 of this. I have a lot of different things. So I still have a lot of stuff, funny enough, that all through April, I've been selling stuff that I bought during Black Friday sales at Target. And so those were bad buys because I still have them and they're still kind of sitting there, but they're finally selling. That's like most of my April sales have been all the stuff I bought in November, which is not my typical. I would like to flip stuff or sell it. I don't really like the word flip for Amazon anymore. Sell it within 1 to 3 months is my goal. And now I'm sitting on like 6 months of stock. But during Q4, I probably have 1,000 or more SKUs, but I think 300 is kind of like a normal for me.
What would you say is your personal favorite category to source in? And what would you say is a good category for someone to start if they're just fresh and new and a baby on Amazon?
My favorite categories are the beauty category. So that's things, or I guess health and personal too. It's kind of both. So toothpaste, lotions, face washes, those kind of things, they always do pretty well, especially if you can find stuff that's been discontinued. So anytime like Neutrogena stops making something, that everyone who's loyal to that item now is looking on Amazon for it. And so the price jumps up. So those are my like favorite. I also do a lot of toys. Anytime I go to Walmart, like the toy aisles are my first aisles and where I spend most of my time. For new sellers, I always recommend Walmart because they're everywhere, and then the clearance aisle. And the reason is that Amazon is kind of weird in that every seller account is not the same. Some people might be gated, some people might not be gated, and that just means you can't sell in a category or in a brand. So when you start, usually toys is gated, sometimes groceries gated, sometimes it's not gated. It just depends when you sign up. Amazon is so crazy. So I tell people to go to the Walmart clearance aisle because they have a ton of different categories all within one aisle. So it makes it a little bit easier. And you can just scan everything on it and you'll see what you can sell, what kind of category maybe at the Walmart store you should go into. So say you scan something like I first found odor eaters on the clearance aisle and also a, what are they called? Where you put it in your window during the summer in your car.
The windshield?
Yeah, like the windshield sun blocker thing. I found that in the clearance aisle. So now you would take that knowledge and go, okay, I'm going to go scan automotive, or I'm going to go scan the rest of the odor eaters or whatever's in that aisle. So that's where I always recommend crafts, like arts and crafts type stuff. So at Walmart, they have those aisles too. Those things are usually ungated for new sellers. Sometimes grocery is. So again, I'm always scanning spices, I'm scanning condiments, and I'm scanning coffee stuff at Walmart all the time. But always recommend the clearance aisle, or like a TJ Maxx. They have a lot of different variety of stuff there, but it can be overwhelming, especially when you're first starting.
Yeah. So I was actually talking to someone in my DMs on Instagram about like scanning items, clearance aisles, just scanning everything that you can possibly scan when you're first starting out, exactly for the reason that you said, to see what you're ungated in and see what you're gated in. And they were a little bit nervous about scanning in the store, that like an employee was going to ask them what the heck they were doing. What advice would you give to this person to kind of calm their nerves?
Yeah, that is a huge concern for everyone when they're starting. And it took me actually a year or two to kind of get over it. But people don't see us or care about us as much as we think they do.
Yeah.
So especially at stores like Walmart, they are well aware of resellers, and you can get your tax exempt at Walmart so that you don't have to pay sales tax if you live in a sales tax state. So even at TJ Maxx, I've scanned with sales associates around me all the time because I'm in the beauty and they're always in there cleaning up or putting out beauty. And I actually have talked to a couple of them, and they'll tell me, oh yeah, this one guy comes in and he buys all of our watches because he sells them on eBay. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Like, they're well aware of what's going on. So just try to like not worry about it. In fact, when I was in the clearance aisle, I found something that I knew from other Walmarts that were on clearance for $10, but they were coming up in my Walmart app at this store for $22. And so I asked the lady in the clearance aisle who was repricing, I said, can you check this? Because I've been finding them at other Walmarts for $10. And they really don't care. They're just doing their job. The only stores that are known to care is Target, because they actually have a reseller policy or anti-reseller policy. However, I source Target all the time. I just look like another Target shopper. So like, it's nothing. I've heard of people who have gotten asked to leave or stuff, or walked out, or like my friend, she was able to check out, but with the guy there with her the whole time. And she was like, do you want to push that to my car then? Like, what are you doing? So it's like whether or not they enforce them, but at Target, I just don't advertise what I'm doing. But I've filmed videos in Target. Like, no one cares about you. As hard as that sounds, no one really cares about us as much as we think they are.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's our own fear and nerves and self-doubt that kind of get in the way and prevent us from even trying sometimes, And in addition to that, it kind of leads me into the next question. So you mentioned that you started learning about Amazon from a course that you took. And I think that a lot of sellers or potential Amazon sellers are intimidated by the Amazon platform specifically. Maybe not so much eBay and Poshmark, although eBay has, shipping that a lot of people end up intimidated by. But were you also intimidated at first? And how did you kind of overcome that?
So my learning style is to buy a course and take it. I like that step-by-step part of it. So I had no idea about Amazon at all. So I took a course like from start to finish. I hadn't watched any YouTube videos. I don't even know that there was a whole lot out there at the time. So I just kind of went in with the course. If people want to learn on YouTube, and that's like they're fine digging, all the information is out there for free. You just might have to dig around for it for a while. But it's funny you say that, because I'm actually more intimidated by eBay. But I think it goes back to what we're talking about of fear, because it's just what you don't know. So when I was on a podcast 2 years ago, I was absolutely terrified, and now I'm on your podcast and it's like nothing. It's like once you start doing something, you get used to it. So you can't let that fear is just telling you there's something really awesome here, that if you can step past that fear, it's really going to work out. So Amazon platform is super confusing and changes all the time. But if you get yourself into a community or have sellers around you that you know, like, and trust, you can reach out to them and ask, or you can ask something in a Facebook group, anything like that. There's all the information out there, but you do have to put in the work to learn it and ask, and not be afraid to ask what you might think is a dumb question, but that it's been asked a lot because it is a valid question. There's no dumb questions. You don't know what you don't know. So I don't think it can be intimidating, obviously, but I don't think it's anything that anyone can't learn if they want to.
Absolutely. I love that answer so much. I think that if you, like you said, anyone can learn it. You just have to decide that you want to and put in the work, basically. All right. Next question that we have for you is, what resources would you recommend to someone that wants to start selling on Amazon if they have no experience before starting?
If you have absolutely no experience and you learn like I learned, you can look for a course. I have a course that I offer. That doesn't mean you need to buy my course, but you can learn like that. Or if you want to dig in, just dig into YouTube because all the information is out there. But once you get started in opening your account, I think that Keepa is the one thing. It's another thing you're going to have to learn, right? It's this whole new, everything's a foreign language when you're learning it, but you'll get used to it. So I think Keepa is something that's really essential to Amazon because it tells you about the product's history. So it helps you make smarter buying decisions. I'm all about getting into a community. So even if you're brand new or you're just thinking about it, join a community and make sure you're in a helpful one because there's a lot of, social media is crazy and people can say whatever they want. And so just if you don't like an answer you get or it's snarky in one community, go look for another one because there's a lot of good ones out there. You don't have to deal with just rude people.
Absolutely. We love that. All right. Walk us through a day in the life of Nikki Kirk.
I have a lot of different days. So as far as Amazon sourcing and selling goes, I sell part-time. So when I was just doing selling, not doing YouTube videos and teaching and all that kind of stuff, I would go out every week, one day a week, and I go all day. So I'll leave like at 7 or even earlier in the morning because Walmart opens early and Walmart's always my first stop. So if I can get a Walmart at 6 a.m., that's great. And then I'll go all day until like 7 and I'll come back. And then I got in the habit because I live in an RV of leaving the stuff in the truck while like overnight because there's not really anywhere to bring it in the RV necessarily. And then the next day I'll bring it all into the RV. I'll pack up my shipment from Amazon. It might take a day or two and then take it to the UPS store. So that's kind of like a sourcing week. Now that I teach stuff, it's a little bit different. I have like what I call office weeks and then sourcing weeks. So one week I'll go sourcing and then the next week I'll do like my office stuff. So editing videos, filming videos, all that kind of stuff.
That's a great answer. Perfect. And do you think that having more of a schedule, like do you have specific days that you source in? Do you try to stick to a schedule? I'm kind of like anti-schedule. If I have to go by a schedule, I find that I like boycott it. I do a lot better when I can like randomly, I know the stuff that I have to get done during the week. And if I can go and do sourcing on like a Monday, I'll do that. But if I can't and I have other stuff, you know what I mean? Like I don't like having like a set scheduled. I guess that's probably why I don't work for someone else. But does that work for you or do you have more of a strict schedule?
Originally I kind of like, it's funny because I think it's because I live in an RV and I like to be outside whenever I can. So the weather kind of dictates what I'm going to do when that week. So if I can get outside, I'll go outside. And so last week I was supposed to be doing stuff on Thursday, but then Thursday was a nice day. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take Thursday off and I'm going to do it on Friday instead. But I'm a planner. I have to have a schedule because if I don't, I will get kind of out of it. Like things will fall through the cracks. I think it's just different personality types like that. So when originally I just kind of would do whatever. I know I have to have a video out by this day and things would kind of get like last minute. I'm one of those people that was in college that did their best work at midnight the night before something was due, like that pressure. So I was getting to do that. And then I was like, I need like to not feel like I'm working all the time. So last year I actually set out a schedule for me. So I'll go sourcing. I like to source during the week because there's less people in the stores. So like anywhere from Monday to Thursday. I will sometimes go sourcing on a Friday or the weekend, but I don't prefer to, especially since I do have that freedom. And I used to take weekdays off and then work over the weekends. But now that I'm so involved with a lot of sellers who work, a normal 9 to 5 and they do this on the side, I've kind of gotten into the habit where I take those regular weekends off like I would if I was working a regular job. It's been working for me. I mean, I don't really mind it. But definitely having a schedule works for me more than not having one.
Perfect. That works. So in our Facebook group, we had someone ask a question and you kind of answered this, I feel like, but I just wanted to ask it and see if there was anything that you wanted to add to it. And she asked, where are the best places to look for items for Amazon, and what programs do you use to see if it's worth picking up?
As far as programs, I'm all about free trials. Every program out there has some kind of free trial, whether it's just a week or some even have 2 months that you can try it. So I'm all about that before spending money on anything, because you don't really need a lot. Besides Keepa, you don't need to spend money on really anything to do this. So there's things that make your life easier, but you don't, that's only when, business is good and you have the money to do that. As far as where my favorite places to source, I personally like Walmart, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Home Goods. There's a store out here called Ollie's. I think they're almost nationwide, but they're not everywhere. Grocery Outlet on the Pacific Northwest the West Coast is my very favorite. I actually will fly out there to go sourcing there because I love it so much. There's always really good stuff there. But any kind of discount or liquidation, if you have a local mom and pop, either a chain or just a one-off discount store, you can usually find a lot of stuff there. And not only that, you can make relationships with the managers to be able to, they might text you when stuff comes in. Or I know I have a friend who her manager, she texts the UPC, so she doesn't have to go in. She can just look it up on her phone and decide if she wants it or not. So you can make those kind of relationships with any manager of it. You can make those relationships with Walmart too, but they're just a lot easier at those local discount stores.
Yeah. And I think that is, that's a really great tool to have in your toolbox as well when you're building those relationships with those people. And going back to what I asked you, like earlier in the episode about kind of being intimidated and thinking that people are watching you and stuff like that. A lot of these places, when you're like a manager at a Walmart or you own your own mom and pop store, you don't want stuff sitting there. Like you need to sell these items and like make a profit yourself. So for the most part, I feel like a lot of people, they don't really care who's buying the stuff as long as they're selling it. Do you agree with that?
Exactly. Yeah, I've had a couple stores go like, wow, you just made our day, because like I bought so much stuff there. There's it's a chain here in Oklahoma, but they got some Nordstrom like high-end beauty stuff, but it wasn't high-end because high-end premium beauty is gated on Amazon, but it wasn't that high-end, but it was high-end enough that it makes a lot of money. And I was dropping like $8,000 in one store there to buy it all. And I made a lot of profit on it. But it's like they were just happy that I was there getting it, because otherwise it was just going to sit there for months. Like they still might have some of the stuff that I couldn't buy there because no one else is really coming in to buy that stuff.
Exactly. Absolutely. So is there something that you think a newer Amazon seller should focus on or try to get ungated in first, whether that's like a brand or a category?
I always recommend the grocery category if at the time you start selling it's gated for you. Always scan things in your pantry and in your house. Anything with a UPC, scan it. And when it says you're restricted, but you can ask for approval because you can get auto ungated in so much stuff. So if you're gated in grocery, that would be where I always recommend starting, as well as beauty, so health and personal care, because that's where I personally find a lot of profit out there doing retail arbitrage.
You mentioned Keepa. So what other like tools would you recommend for going out and scanning?
So I just use Keepa as like something seems too good to be true. Let me just double check it in Keepa. Other than that, I really only use the Amazon app. If you do use Inventory Lab, which is a software that it can track your expenses and do your books for you, but it also, what I use it for is to pack up my FBA shipments to send to Amazon. And they have an app called Scoutify 2, I think it's called. And you can use that to scan and it'll tell you different things. There's a bunch of different scanning things out there. There's Seller Amp, which I know newer sellers really like. I always say whatever you use to learn on, like you're going to love that. So I learned on the free Amazon app, and so I know how to use it and I can use it. People who learn on Seller Amp love Seller Amp and will use it. So there's just a bunch of different ones out there that some are good and bad. For me, some of them take too long and I'm like impatient. I can't wait for it to load. I'm like, come on, I got to go to the next thing. So Of all the different tools, I would say Keep is the only really one you need. Inventory Lab is really nice to have. And then Seller Board is another one I use that's really nice to have because it tells me my profit. So if I sell whatever I sold today, I can open the app and see how much profit I've made today, how much profit I'm forecasted to make for the month of April that we're in right now. And so I use that all the time as well. But again, you don't need a lot of tools to start this. You can just start and add as you go and always take advantage of any free trials out there.
Perfect. This kind of goes along with that a little bit, but is your process for finding items now the same as when you first started? So are you still walking into a Walmart and going to the clearance aisle and scanning everything? Are you still scanning everything that you come across, or do you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for, or do you do a lot of online research? Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about that?
Yep. So when I started, I did the Walmart clearance aisle. I actually scanned like Bed Bath & Beyond when I first started. I never source there now, because it's almost impossible to find anything. It just takes the time you spend scanning versus what you find is not worth it for me. But I definitely scanned every store in the very beginning. And now I just have certain stores that I like. So at Walmart, I'll go to the health, like that pharmacy area. If I'm feeling like it, I'll go through the kitchen. But I definitely recommend kitchen for new sellers because that's another ungated category. Then I'll go to the seasonal aisles. I go to toys. And then again, if I feel like it or not, like depending how the day went, how full my cart is, I'll go through the grocery area, those aisles like the baking aisle, the coffee aisle, that kind of stuff. And I've been doing that, but I'm still going in blind for the most part. Like I'll pick, like there was a cold medicine shortage earlier this year. So I was scanning everything on the cold aisle, not knowing what was going to make a profit or not. Clearance aisle, I tend to do it when they're doing resets. So twice a year, there'll be more stuff on the clearance aisle than other times of the year. And I think because of all the shutdowns and everything's still backlogged coming from China. So it was like they got all this Q4 stuff late, and so they couldn't put it anywhere. And so it all ended up on clearance. And so you kind of know as you've been doing it, what is a good aisle and what's not worth your time, or what's a good store and what store is not worth your time. And you definitely get to know it, but you all start somewhere. And when you are starting, you are going to be so frustrated all the time. And just know that you are on the right path. And that's how it is. Like everyone's frustrated. You'll scan for hours. You could scan it all day and maybe find one or two things. And that's just how it goes. But you get better the more you do it. So don't give up. If you're frustrated, you are right where every new seller is, and it gets better.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And you talked a little bit about, your profits. And so we're big on having sourcing criteria. So knowing what you want to make before purchasing an item. And it's so easy to get excited, especially I think like if you're scanning hundreds and hundreds of items and you finally see something that you can buy that you're ungated in and that, you can purchase to sell on Amazon. What does your sourcing criteria look like? How much profit are you looking to make on an item minimum?
My minimum profit is $5 on anything. So I want to make at least $5 and then 50% ROI. But that's really up to, the seller who's scanning the stuff. Because for me, I don't want to spend $20 and only make $5 on something. I want to make $10 minimum on that. So that's kind of my go-to, and that's what I've always done. And the reason I do $5 is because prices change on Amazon. And so you don't want to buy something for $1 and all of a sudden it drops by $2 and now you're losing money on that item. So I like to have that buffer room so I know I'm making some money, or at least can break even if something goes terribly wrong. And then I don't buy a lot of stuff at once. That has been my downfall. Anytime I see something and I'm like, oh, it's relatively cheap, maybe it only costs $2. They've got 80 of them here, but I'm going to make $5 in every one. And it's the first buy, the first time I've scanned it, the first time I've bought it, and I'll buy them all. And then it always ends badly for me. So I test buy everything. And how many I test buy really depends. So again, if I'm paying $20 for something, I might only buy 2 or 3 of them. It just depends. Like if I'm buying them for 20, but they make 40, I might buy a little bit more of that than I would. But if something's relatively inexpensive, makes $5, maybe I'll get 6 to 12 of them to test. It all kind of, it's just how I'm feeling about the item. but definitely test. And then once it starts selling, I go and I'll clear the shelf after that. But anytime I've cleared the shelf on the very beginning it's never worked out for me.
I think that's amazing advice, actually. It's so hard, like I said, to not get really amped up and excited about finding a great item. And I'm very much like that. Like, I will buy as many as I possibly can. And that, that has bit me in the butt before. So I think that's really great advice to take away. All right. So I want to talk a little bit more about like people being afraid of making mistakes on Amazon and how that potentially paralyzes them into just not taking any action at all. Can you talk about a time that you've made kind of a fairly large mistake? If that's assuming, I guess, that you have made one, and what happened as a result and how you handled that whole situation?
Yeah, mistakes are definitely just a part of life. And I have made so many mistakes on Amazon, and you learn from them. So you're going to make a mistake. So definitely don't be scared of it. Just I do things to minimize it, like not going deep on an item. So those are mistakes I've made. And so that when it does go wrong, then it doesn't go terribly wrong and cost you a lot of money, but then you learn from it and move on. So when I do FBM sometimes, I do it a lot more now, obviously, that I'm stationary and have more room to store stuff. But FBM is where I send stuff direct to the customer versus FBA is where I box up all the stuff I bought and send it to Amazon and they warehouse it. And then when someone orders it, they send it to the customer. So for FBM, I tested out some like larger, it was like back when Coco Melon was hot, and it was like a larger doll thing of Coco Melon. And I listed it. I only found 2 there. I listed it for, I don't know, $60 or something. And it cost me $20. I assumed I would make some money on it, like at least $10 or something. But since it's FBM, I wasn't totally sure how much I would make or how much the shipping would cost. I'm sure you guys have this with eBay and stuff too. So when the order came through, it cost me like $24 or something to ship it. And so I learned to turn off expedited shipping, and I learned to take back the other one I had listed because it wasn't worth it. It wasn't going to make any money. So I adjusted my shipping templates, and so that in the future, like I also don't really list large things anymore because I'm still a little bit like figuring out how much it's actually going to ship. So now I always tell people, if you're going to do FBM, definitely do it. It's worth it. But just list one thing to begin with and see what that shipping comes out to if you don't know what it's going to be. You can use things like Pirate Ship to estimate your shipping and all that, but definitely just list one. One of the bigger mistakes that I made was I bought stuff. I found a distributor and I was like going to order all these different home type items from them. And one of them was a ceramic sink caddy, one of those things that holds your sponges for you. And it comes not necessarily in a box, but what was happening was because I was trying to go, more remote. This was back in 2018 and do things with a prep center. So I would buy it from the distributor. I would never actually see it and it would go straight to the prep center. So again, I went deep on this item. I think I bought like 140 of them, never saw it. But what happened was it got to the warehouse. The prep center packed it however it needed to be packed, whether that was in bubble wrap or a box, I'm not totally sure. But then Amazon, when people would order it, was sending it to them in a padded mailer, this ceramic item. And so they kept breaking. And so then I was getting replenished, or what is it called? Where they send out I'm blanking on the words, where they would replacement. They would send out another one free of charge to the customer. So now I'm out 2 of them. And then sometimes those were ended up breaking. So it ended up like I got my account wasn't shut down, but that listing got shut down. And I still had 100 of these things that I had purchased already, paid for the prep center, paid those extra fees. And I opened it back up because if you get voice of the consumers, it's not a bad thing, but if you get a lot of them on one item, they're going to pull down your listing. So I went back to Amazon and said, hey, like all of these are saying that you are shipping it in a padded mailer. And they just sent me this thing back of like, we know what we're doing. We go through all our shipping, blah, blah, blah. And so I had it back up again, but again, they kept getting sent and broken. And so I ended up just disposing of probably 80 that I had left because it was cheaper than necessarily putting my account at risk for negative feedback on my seller account. And so it was just crazy. But that is still one of my like, never again will I buy a ceramic thing that I'm not physically like looking at and sending into Amazon because you can't trust Amazon to ship it right. I'm sure the prep center did as best they could, but it was still breaking when the customer got it.
Holy cow. That must have been like a heart sinking moment. Like when you realize like, holy cow, I'm stuck with these. And they're obviously like Amazon obviously thinks that they know what they're doing and they're not changing their ways. So now what, And you just kind of have to, like you said, weigh your options and figure out what the best scenario is to deal with it, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was crushing because I was like, oh, this is going to work. I'm going to be able to order essentially wholesale, even though it's a distributor, wholesale, never see it, never have to prep it. Like, it's going to be awesome. And those dreams were quickly crushed.
Yeah, that's rough. But that's a great example, I think, too. All right. How have you been able to grow your reselling business over the last few years, and what have you done specifically to grow it?
Over year. So my very first year, I did a half a year, and I started in August. So Q4 was basically, coming into full swing. So that was a great time to start because things are a little bit easier. Everything sells during Q4. But what happened was I ran out of money that first Q4. Like I was still working on a savings. I kept my money in my business, rolled it over, but I only had so much money. So since then, I've always got as much money to buy inventory as I can. And that's really how I've been growing it up until this last year, is just being able to invest more money into buying products to sell. So as much as you can stock your shelves on Amazon, the better your whole business is going to be. But when you're starting, you only have a certain amount of money that you can spend or should spend while you're figuring it out, because you don't want to go into debt on something you don't totally understand. So that was how I grew mostly. So every year I try to plan and have as much, and now I use a credit card. I pay it off every month, but I use a credit card to buy my inventory. So it makes things a little bit easier. When I started, I just used cash. And then this last year, I finally started to get more into creating my own listings and making bundles. So during Q4, I made probably 8 different bundles. Some of them got flagged as potential IP. I gave my own self with these. So there's certain terms like Starbucks or Sonic the Hedgehog, which is what I did. I tried to make different bundles of coffee and toys, and they all got pulled down. But of the 8, 2 of them actually worked out and sold a lot. And so I had a $10,000 profit on this one bundle that I made during Q4. I'm still selling it now. But it was like I tested it. It didn't all work. But the ones that did, I learned from. And so now I'm going to try and make more bundles this year and really scale, which has always been my goal. But again, I can only have a goal that's within my ability. My goal was to travel in an RV and see all of the 48 lower states. And so that goal was more of a priority than, growing my Amazon business and having a warehouse and all that kind of stuff. And now that I've settled down, building a warehouse and growing into the other kind of things of it. But definitely the one thing, it's not really necessarily helpful. It's just having more money to put into the business, especially during Q4, as much stock as you can stock into Amazon. You will have terrific sales and it should all work out. But if you don't have, you're only going to have so many sales if you don't have the funds. And it's totally fine. I've been there. The first 2 Q4s were not great, but this last Q4, I want to say I made $40,000 profit or more. I can't totally remember. I think it was more. But anyways, I made a lot of profit this last year, and that was just from stocking my shelves and trying out that bundle.
Wow, that is amazing. And I completely agree. I've heard so many people say that making sure that you have enough capital, especially around Q4, you can only, source as much as your available capital allows you to source. And the more you're sourcing, the more you're going to sell, the more money you're going to make, essentially. All right. What do you think is the most important thing that a reseller should know before getting started on Amazon?
Just that you're going to make mistakes. You don't know what you're doing, even if you do think you know what you're doing. Like, things are going to come up. Amazon changes all the time. It's incredibly frustrating. Amazon is the most frustrating part of selling on Amazon. But just keep going forward. The only mistake I see people make that makes them fail is that they give up, or they assume it's easy, and it's not easy. It's a lot of work. Like, technically it's easy, right? I'm going at Walmart, I'm buying stuff, I'm selling on Amazon, but there's so many things that to go into that. It is work. You are going to be working at this, but it can make your life so much better if you really give into it and just put everything, treat it like a business. You're starting a business. And if you treat it like that, it will treat you back like that. So I always just don't give up. If you really want it, don't give up. Even when things are hard, you can take a day off, you can take a week off, but don't just totally give up if this is really what you want to do.
Absolutely. What do you feel has been your biggest success on Amazon so far?
I mean, the one that's top of mind is just that bundle I made and seeing how it can really work. Because if anyone's been out there scanning on Amazon in the store, you see all the different bundles that people have made and you can't list on them. There'll be things like a little free sticker or like all these kind of things that you're like, oh, you can see that it works. Like they have great ranks. The price is crazy. You know they're making a profit. And so I finally was like, okay, I'm going to try this thing out. And so making that bundle has been really the most like eye-opening thing for me and how I'm really going to move my business into this year and in the future.
Is there anything that we didn't ask you today that you think it's important to talk about in regards to retail arbitrage, selling on Amazon, getting started on Amazon, anything of that nature?
I don't think so. Just through talking to other people, the main thing that makes it difficult for people is going it alone. That's why I'm always telling everyone to get into a community wherever they can, whether that's your friend in the same town that sells or your friend in another state that sells, or if you get in a community on Discord, Facebook, wherever there's a community that is an app or whatever that you like, just being able to surround yourself, because there's times where, your friends and your family might think you're crazy or not understand what's going on. So you need someone who gets it to like really understand and help you when things are hard or that you got to vent or just anything like that. So really, I'm all about getting into a community that helps you and helps you grow, motivates you, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And speaking of community, before we ask you the very last question, go ahead and tell us about your selling guide, the amazing Amazon community that you've built yourself.
So on YouTube, I'm Nikki Kirk, which is where all of my videos live, on my free videos on selling on Amazon. And then I started I think it was in 2019, a BOLO group, which is Be on the Lookout. So it's every month the people in there, the members, are sharing what they're finding in store right now so that other sellers can go and look for those items. And it has the same $5 minimum profit requirements and all of that I source on my own. And so that group really kind of grew into this beautiful community of we're sharing leads, but we're also just talking about Amazon, everything that happens, sharing your wins, sharing when your kids finally help you with it. And like, you're like able to step back on certain areas like prepping or whatever. And so it's just celebrating, your life and Amazon in it. And so through that, I started, I have ungating guides, I have a course that teaches you how to sell, and it all just really kind of started from that one BOLO group and helping sellers in anything that they needed. If I knew how to do it, I was there to help it. And so it's all kind of under the Your Selling Guide brand now. And I have also just started this year a podcast called Your Selling Podcast to just help. Really, the aim of the podcast is, like I had Liz on, to just talk and hear other people's stories about online selling. Because again, when you hear something in someone else that is similar to you, you think, oh, wait, I can do this. Not everyone's probably going to travel, but maybe you want to go part-time on something. And so there's other stories out there, and I just want to showcase other people who sell online, not just Amazon, but in all different aspects.
I love that so much. Thank you. All right. And for the very last question, we ask this of every single guest that we have on. If you could give your fellow resellers one piece of advice on how they can turn their paycheck into a daycheck, what would it be?
Just start. Start with the little knowledge and the little money that you have, but you're never going to get to that goal if you don't just start. So do it afraid. Know you're going to make mistakes, but just one foot in front of the other every day. Keep pushing towards your goal.
Oh my gosh, that is so perfect. Nikki, thank you so, so much. You were amazing. Such a pleasure to have on. Such invaluable information and so many gold nuggets. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you guys for having me. This was a lot of fun.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Paycheck to Daycheck Reselling Podcast.
Anything we mentioned in this episode will be linked down below in the show notes or description down below.
Be sure to share this episode with anyone you think it will help and follow us on social media at P2D Podcast.
Thanks again for listening. Keep working towards that Daycheck.